As an entrepreneur, there's also taxes that you have to do with the city. There's also the LLC franchise tax that I mentioned, right? And they're all due at a certain date. And one of the biggest mistakes that I made recently is I didn't add it on my calendar. I didn't set reminders, and that ended up costing me $200. Make sure you give this video a thumbs up. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. If you're on YouTube, if you're on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, follow the podcast, give it a rating. Okay, share this with a friend that needs to hear this.
Welcome to UndocuStartup by Juan Maya Hernandez.
Welcome to today's episode of UndocuStartup Weekly, where I share the biggest lessons that I've been learning building the #1 entrepreneurship program for undocumented students. If you're an Undocu student liaison and you want to bring entrepreneurship programming to your Undocu students, please visit www.undocustartup.com. Again, that is www.undocustartup.com to see if you qualify to work with us. All right, now tax season is around the corner. It just passed. Taxes were due on April 15. And in this episode, I want to talk about taxes. I want to talk about some of the lessons. I want to talk about some tools that are going to be useful, some stuff that I've learned, some stuff that I've used. So hopefully you find a nugget or two within this. Right now, if you're an Undocu entrepreneur, you may be wondering, like, why should I even pay taxes? With everything going on, is there even what are the pros and cons, right? Well, I can't tell you for everybody's experience. But I was reading this article, and I'm going to link it down below, about this entrepreneur that was in removal proceedings. They were about to get deported, right? But when it came down to it, that person and their attorney, their lawyers, ended up making a case for them to stay by talking about them paying taxes, by talking about them having employees. So, and again, I'm going to link it down below. And it's on a case-by-case basis, right? But what I take away from this is, if you pay your taxes, it works more for you. It'll never work against you, right? And the way that I view it now, and the reason why I pay taxes, is because I know I won't be undocumented forever. I know that when I want to fix up my status, I'm going to have evidence, or I'm going to back up my case, right? And me paying taxes, me when I have employees, having that track record that I've been here for this amount of time, that I went to UCLA, that I did all these things, that I built this company, that I'm contributing, is only going to help me. The way that I view it is, this is only going to help me. Paying taxes is only going to help me. And that's one of the biggest reasons why I pay it. And the second reason is because I grew up on EBT. I grew up on food stamps. I come from a low income background, and a lot of the help that I've received, including health insurance, like Medicaid, all that stuff, comes from other people paying their taxes. So when I look at a bill as an entrepreneur to pay my taxes, I always make sure I pay it, because I get a lot of resources from it. I use the public parks. I use all the resources that I can from the city and the state. And I know that if I continue to pay taxes, is going to open those doors for other people that grew up in a similar background. So those are my two reasons why I pay taxes. What I want to talk about in this episode is sort of like, okay, here are some of the lessons. But also I wanted to start off with why it's important for me to pay taxes, because I know I'm going to fix up my status in the near future. All right. So lesson number 1 is to always save 20 to 25% from every contract. I made the mistake that in my first year of doing my business, I would get a contract. Let's say this contract was $500. I would get this contract and I would look at the money and I'll be like, okay, $500, that's amazing. That's all for me. But that's the mistake. All right, that's the mistake. Because eventually, when March and April come around, you're going to have to pay taxes on those $500, right? So what's the lesson here? The lesson is that you should have a buffer of money for taxes. All right. And this buffer, I always like to say, is between 20 to 25%. All right. So out of those $500, 20% of that would be maybe $100. 100 of those dollars, put that in a separate bank account. You don't touch it. You leave it there. So like when tax comes around, you have that money saved. Right. And this buffer, now that I'm learning now, is like the buffer for an LLC is $800 as well. You see, LLC has this yearly annual tax fee of $800. That's whether you make money or not. They're very strict. Just think of it like a membership for you to continue to do your business. And you got to make sure you pay for it. So that is the lesson number 1. Save 20 to 25% from every contract, right? Not all of that money is yours because you have to pay taxes on it. Right. Now, lesson number 2 is to use tools to help you with bookkeeping in terms of your taxes. All right. Some people like to use spreadsheets. Some people like to use Excel sheets. I personally like to use tools like technology that's already out there, like QuickBooks. QuickBooks Self-Employed is the one that I use. Now, this is not a sponsored post. I'm not promoting them. But what I like about them is that, one, I'm able to send invoices. Two, it creates reports for me, profit and loss statements that you'll need. Three, when I have an account and my accountant can log into QuickBooks, they can look at all my different things when it comes to tax season, right? And number four, it shows a bar graph on a month-to-month basis, seeing like the cash flow. Did you win? Did you lose? Profit and loss, right? And those are the reasons why I use QuickBooks. It makes my life easier. Every single contract that comes in, I can categorize it into a business expense, a business income. I can look at expenses. I can track it under there. I can file receipts. I can upload invoices. All that stuff is handled through QuickBooks. Now, I do pay a good amount of money. I mean, you could pay $10 a month, $30 a month, or you can do a yearly price. But for me, it just helps me with everything. And it also helps me with mileage, which is also really important when it comes to doing my taxes. So that's lesson number two, that like the first year I did not use it because I also didn't make enough money. But eventually I got to a point where I was making a little bit more money and I was able to afford it. And it just makes everything easier. It makes bookkeeping easier. It helps me look at how much am I spending on advertisement, everything in between. So definitely consider using tools. Right. Lesson number three is having calendar reminders when it comes to tax season for an entrepreneur, right? We all know that taxes are due on April 15. And even though I knew that, as an entrepreneur, there's also taxes that you have to do with the city. There's also the LLC franchise tax that I mentioned, right? And they're all due at a certain date. And one of the biggest mistakes that I made recently is I didn't add it on my calendar. I didn't set reminders, and that ended up costing me $200. For this, and it could have been $0 as long as I filed it on time. So you want to make sure that you file things on time. If you don't file things on time, all of these things have penalties. All of these things have interest. All these things pile up, and you don't want to be in a position where things start piling up, and now you're owing a lot of different things. So that is another important lesson. So for taxes, set a reminder on when you have to file for the city. Usually for the city, it's February. Usually for an LLC, you have to file something called the statement of information, just to show to show status that you're in good standing. And you also have to pay the franchise fee on the fourth month of every year. So those are a few reminders. Right. And again, that's a thing that you don't want to let go of. You don't want to make the mistake that I made. Make sure that you pay things on time so you avoid any late fees. Now, what do I wish I learned earlier? Number one, the annual LLC tax fee, right? I knew that I had to pay $100. But again, I wish what I knew is like that I should be putting those $800 in the next contract that comes in. Let's put those $800 on the side. The biggest challenge that I have had is like when I've done this, it's like, okay, you have to have 20 to 25% of your taxes on a separate bank account, right? But the biggest challenge that I've had these past few years is dealing with cash flow problems and having that money saved for my taxes, right? So for example, let's say I have $2,000 saved for my taxes, but then I am running out of money for my business because no contract comes in. The thing that I've done in the past is like, you know what? I'm going to use this money from taxes and I'm going to spend it so I can continue the business, because we can't go to zero. And that's what I've done in the past. That's one of the biggest challenges. But what I wish I knew earlier is like, okay, let's have separate money in the bank account for taxes. And we use that money only if there's really no other options, right? And that's what I've done. I mean, sometimes it's difficult dealing with that mental stress because you're like, I know I need to have this money for taxes, but at the same time, I also know that I'm running out of money. How do I balance it? The ways that I've been able to overcome this is like, well, for one, is my last option. And for two, if I can get income elsewhere, I can do it. And for three, I have some savings in my personal bank account. So sometimes I use that money, even though I don't want to. But that's something that I wish I knew earlier, that like, you need to have money saved up. You need to have money saved up for taxes. You need to save from every single contract, because it is going to end up biting you in the future, especially for me, because I work with institutions, right? I work with their accounting team. They're the ones that send me an invoice. They're the ones that send me tax documents. And I have to report everything, because I generally get the 1099 forms that says, okay, we paid you this amount of money last year, and this is what you're going to pay taxes on. So I definitely wish that earlier I had money set aside for my taxes, and that I didn't touch that money only in emergencies, which I've been doing for the past few years. And thankfully I've been paying my taxes on time. But you got to continue moving forward, right? You got to continue moving forward. The other thing that I had to come into consensus is like, I wish I knew that I also could do payment plans. And I also wish that you get no refunds, right? When I was an employee, W-2 income, you'd get a refund. You'll get some money, and some of my friends that have jobs, they're like, oh yeah, I look forward to tax season. I'm going to get some money back and it's going to be great. Right. And that's great and all. But as an entrepreneur, I realized that one, I got no refund last year and the previous year as well. And the other thing is I can also do payment plans. So in this conversation of being late on taxes or maybe not having the enough money in the bank to be able to pay it, I know there's payment plans. It just works like if you're financing a car, right? Where you pay, but it has interest, right? And sometimes that could be an easier alternative that I wish I knew earlier, that I didn't know that existed. I didn't know it existed in the past, but now I know. Now that I know, that's good, because I'm like, okay, instead of me paying it in one go, if I don't have the money right now, I got to continue working hard and then paying it on a month by month basis, which could be another solution to the problem that I mentioned, right? Because if you don't have the money in the bank, then you start panicking. You're like, okay, where am I going to get that money? The other thing that I wish I knew earlier was the importance of paying taxes. And it's important as I am growing my company. And taxes are going to continue to grow. If you have employees, you're going to pay taxes. If you want to set up your company in another state. So let's say I'm in California, I want to do business in New York and I want to do business in Illinois. I have to set up something. So I do taxes there and pay taxes there, right? So these things are going to pile up. And what I've also learned is as I continue to scale on UndocuStartup and as I continue to work with some of these institutions and my contracts keep getting bigger and bigger, they ask for more things because there's more things at stake, right? There's a contract. They need my W-9, which is the way that they get my tax information so they can send me a 1099 at the end of the year. There's just more at stake. So what I've learned from here is like, the bigger you want your company to be, the more you're going to have to pay, the higher the price becomes, right? If you want to do a business operationally in 52 states, it's going to cost money, right? To file for that, so that's something I wish I knew, but it is important because it allows me to get bigger and bigger contracts. And I've connected with founders that when they reach a $5,000 or a $10,000 contract and they don't end up taking it because they don't want to pay the taxes on it. So it does come with more responsibility, but it is important. Like I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, I said, if this is going to help me in the future, it's not going to hurt me. And it's evidence of good moral standing in the U.S. I will do it because I know in the future I'll be using this as evidence when I do want to fix up my status. So I see it as a really important thing. Now the next lesson and the final lesson is I've hired a CPA. Right. When it comes to doing taxes, I could read a book about it. I could do all these other things. But one of the biggest things that I've done is just hiring somebody that is an expert on it. Now, my CPA, I pay that company a certain amount of money for them to file and do my taxes. But they also look through my QuickBooks. They also look at how I can do some deductions. So some things that I didn't know in the past was like I can do deductions when I'm traveling to my business with my business, right? Like the mileage. Like last year, I traveled for 1,600 miles for my clients. And, I tracked all of that and I got deductions. So I don't have to pay taxes on it. And it's those little things that the reason why I pay a CPA. The biggest thing here is like I've learned that there's different types of tax help you can get. You can get tax help for free at VITA tax centers, which are volunteer income tax assistance centers. You can also go to tax professionals, but some are not IRS certified. And if they're not IRS certified, if something happens with your taxes, they won't be able to help you and contact the IRS. So when you're looking at somebody to help you with your taxes, I'm not saying get a CPA. What I am saying is get somebody that is IRS certified, because that means they can actually contact the IRS and they can do a lot more than just a tax professional that just started. So don't just anybody when it comes to taxes, look at their track record, look at what they're able to do, look at how they're able to help you, look at how much you're paying, ask them about, how much income, will it increase, etc. And that's the beauty about having a CPA. I also don't have to wait in line to do my taxes. I can just contact them via email, via phone number, and then they're able to help me. When I had a question about how do I set up in another state and how do I do my taxes in another state, how do I go about that, they were able to answer me really quickly. And just having that person on my team, or at least having them within my proximity when it comes to tax questions is extremely, extremely helpful. So again, let's wrap up the lessons. Number one, always save 20 to 25% from every contract. Number two, use tools for bookkeeping. I use QuickBooks. I pay them a certain amount of money, so like that they are able to. I have access to their software. Number three, have calendar reminders. Everything costs money, right? But if you are late to your taxes, especially as a business owner, you can be spending a lot more than if you just file on time. So that is a mistake that I've made in the past. And number four is definitely you can hire somebody to help you with your taxes. It's look for somebody that is IRS certified. If something happens with your taxes, if something happens with your tax return, an IRS certified agent, somebody that can do taxes and they're IRS certified, they're going to be able to contact the IRS. So if you get into any problems with your taxes, they're going to be able to connect with them. So again, pay your taxes if you see it as a way to new opportunities in the future. Pay your taxes if you view it as a way to provide back, contribute back to the U.S. economy. Again, I did it because I grew up on food stamps. I use a lot of public resources. They help me out a lot. And now I have no problem paying my taxes. I know it's going to continue to increase. Taxes are going to be dependent on how much money you pay, how much money you make in that given year and the previous year. Try to not fall behind. That hasn't happened to me, but I know that there's penalties. I know there's interest, similar to like a car when you fall behind a payment. So yeah, hopefully you guys found this helpful. I'm doing this because tax season just passed. I made some mistakes. I don't want y'all to make the same mistakes. Okay, so hopefully you found this helpful. And if you did, make sure you give this video a thumbs up. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. If you're on YouTube, if you're on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, follow the podcast. Give it a rating. Okay, share this with a friend that needs to hear this. And remember that Entrepreneurship has no limits. I'll talk to you soon. Bye. Take care.